On a quiet street corner in Graham sits a small office.
On the state side of it, we're in support mode.
Hey, good to see you.
And inside a standard conference room.
Hey.
These two women with nearly 50 years of elections experience.
We wait for the curveball or the unexpected or the one-offs that we need to help them address.
But the past 2 years have been anything but standard.
So I would say that most elections offices now have some kind of separation from the public itself, and then a separation that, doesn't allow anybody in but approved people.
There are still a lot of folks who have not accepted the results of the 2020 election.
State Elections Director Karen Brinson-Bell knows the exact date when things changed. November 4th, 2020.
It had gone so smoothly. We had the results all reported shortly after midnight. You don't do that in a presidential year. And yet the next day I'm in front of the media.
2020 may have been an unprecedented year. We may have had unprecedented turnout, but the conduct of elections did not change.
Since then, a deluge of lawsuits, accusations, and a massive amount of public records requests.
I've talked to people in California, Ohio, that are getting the exact same letters that we're getting in North Carolina, asking for the exact same information.
Requests largely focus on finding proof the 2020 election was stolen or rigged. They believe tabulators did not add correctly, and they want to see something called cast vote records, which are not even a public record in North Carolina.
I've even had it suggested that I sat over in a corner and tinkered with the results on election night. Me, myself, just little old me, aggregating results from 100 counties and 2,500 or so polling places.
Back at the Alamance Board of Elections, these requests add up while the number of workers shrink.
Alamance County's been very blessed. We have 7 people altogether. Some other counties our size might not have but 2 or 3. There are some counties in the state that only have 1 person, some with 2 people.
Is that frightening in some ways that some counties may only have 1 full-time worker?
Oh, it's incredibly frightening. And we have tried to mitigate that situation by having field support.
Since 2019, 45 county election directors have either quit or retired, including Kathy Holland. The reasons go beyond the amount of work and scrutiny.
We have security concerns. And so what added risk is there for those small offices? If the county government won't even fund a panic button.
Security's become a huge concern, and for good reason.
Probably one of the toughest and one that I couldn't even wrap my arms around was receiving an email that questioned in very vulgar terms my parents, the conception of me and the act of bringing me into this world, but in very vulgar terms, and that they should have reconsidered, that I shouldn't have been born.
This summer, the threats ramped up even more. In one local office, a man showed a weapon on his hip to staff. But it gets worse.
We've seen an individual who has, it's not been uncommon to receive public record requests from this person or comments during public comment, but it's the tone changed to making phone calls to our reception line, and at one point even indicated that someone would be murdered.
Now it is 6:30, so we can get started.
We're in Hickory now, one of 14 town halls for the NC Trusted Elections Tour.
And what we're hoping to provide for you tonight is a basic understanding of what some of the rules of the game of politics is, particularly when it comes to election administration.
Former Charlotte Mayor Jennifer Roberts and former Supreme Court Justice Bob Orr are leading the effort.
Elections are kind of the core of our democracy, and if we can start there and really trust that, then we can build the civility back into, we can build the democratic principles of people having a voice and a say in how they're governed.
How are new registrants checked to make sure that they are residents and legal citizens before their votes get counted?
There's a lot of misunderstanding about a very complicated, comprehensive system. We were, I think, in Edenton, and a lady said, well, I got 16 absentee ballots, and that's wrong. Turns out she got 16 applications for absentee ballots that candidates and the parties and groups had centered. But you only get 1 actual absentee ballot. she didn't understand the distinction.
Election deniers show up at almost every event. At this one, a gentleman yelled out, "There's no such thing as cybersecurity." Bob and Jennifer understand they won't change everyone's mind, but perhaps it can slow the spread of digital wildfire.
A lie gets around the world before the truth can put on its pants, right? So it's always been there, but social media and the internet make it exponentially harder to get in front of.
Karen, if you could sit in front of that individual that emailed and questioned whether you should have been conceived, what do you think you'd tell him?
Election officials say they understand you may disagree with election policies, but they are following the law.
So, Kathy, a lot of the misconceptions are about hacking machines, workers being partisan and, having an impact. If you could sit right in front of those folks today, what would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I'd like to explain to everybody the checks and balances that we go through the whole process. How there are bipartisan teams available in ballot proofing, in testing equipment, in putting equipment out in polling places, the seals that we have on equipment, the chain of custody that we put on each piece of equipment, checking those seals, and all the way down to election night when we're loading things up to the State Board of Elections.
But with deniers still sending threats about 2020, there is no question a bit of anxiousness looms. The 2022 election count arrives in just weeks.